Here at One American News, we will continue to keep the names of these young men in our thoughts and prayers. And staying on this topic, we'd like to bring on our next guest, Jeremy Stalnecker, who's a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran and executive director of the Mighty Oaks Warriors program. Jeremy, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I wish we could talk under better circumstances, I guess, acknowledging the news from over the weekend. But I think it's important to still discuss it. We just talked about what happened in Pensacola. Just about a week ago, we saw what happened at the Pearl Harbor base. And these are both kind of testaments to the idea that for a lot of soldiers, when they come back home, the battle isn't totally over. So that's why I'm glad that we have you on tonight. Can you explain what your organization is and what it really sought out to do?
Sure, Alex. Thank you for allowing us to talk, and I appreciate your focus on the victims as well. That's the right focus, of course. And as tragic as these situations and circumstances always are, there's heroism that comes and is reflected as well, and we appreciate that. And I'm glad that you're focusing on that. Mighty Oaks Foundation, we are an organization run by veterans and active duty service members for veterans and active duty service members. We support those who have served by providing programs, and a number of programs. We could talk more about that if you'd like, for those who are dealing with trauma related to service to their country, also to their community and the first responder community. And we've had the opportunity over the last several years to serve over 3,000 folks who've come through our programs and found hope, purpose, and direction beyond the traumas of that military service.
And I think that what you guys are doing is so important, too, because it's an idea that it's also being led by people who have been in these types of situations before. I mean, we always talk about on this show how a lot of the decisions that are made in Washington. You never necessarily get to talk to the people who are affected. Yep. You never really get to see firsthand the type of things that you're trying to address. And this also comes at an important time, too. There's a hearing coming up on this Wednesday that I want you to talk a little bit about. I know that it's mostly promoting certain programs, but I want you to talk about a little bit about what that hearing is and what you're hoping to convey during that hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that we approach this as a veteran or a service member to others, veterans and service members, is extremely important. In fact, we've had a study done on our program and the effectiveness of that. It's very important, obviously. 70% of those who have come through our program have found some healing in that, and it's a big conversation, of course. Almost 40% would say they'd no longer be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress after a program like ours. Why is that? Because we have folks who have experienced many of the same things they have and are talking to them face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, peer-to-peer, saying, I know where you've been, I've been there as well, and I don't have it all figured out, but I want to take you forward. And there's tremendous power in that. Which leads to the congressional meeting that you're talking about on Wednesday. We're so excited to be a part of this. Congresswoman Hartzler from Missouri is hosting this, and it's a wonderful bipartisan forum. We've got a number of folks who are invested in this from the Mental Health Caucus, the Veterans Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, all coming together to talk about alternatives to many of the VA programs. And the VA is doing a lot of great things and struggling in some areas, as we know, and we could talk about that as well. But there are a lot of organizations like ours who are funded, who are prepared, who have done this work, who are doing this work, and are asking for greater access to those who need the help. And we are ready to do that and really trying to work with those in authority to make that happen.
And that's so important to do at this time, too, because, right. I mean, you could look at any issue right now, and it essentially does come back to veterans a lot of the times. Yes. I mean, here in California, we look at the homelessness epidemic. A lot of times those people on the streets are veterans who just didn't have the support system to come home to or necessarily get the whatever resources that they needed to kind of become back accustomed into normal life here in the U.S. One that we pay attention to very often is the suicide epidemic among veterans. I mean, it's something, I believe the number is something about 20 suicides per day of veterans. I mean, that is a number that is so staggering. It doesn't get the attention that it deserves, since these are people. The reason you and me can have this conversation is because of sacrifices that people like that made.
Absolutely.
And the fact that we don't talk about it more often is very troubling to me. But your organization does look to kind of stem that problem, and you've had successes in doing that too. Can you speak a little bit about those efforts?
Yeah, we've had tremendous success, thankfully. And again, I believe it's much, it goes back to that peer-to-peer aspect. We look at what the VA has done and government programs, and again, I'm not against all of those things, but 15 years ago, the veteran suicide rate in the United States was about 16 a day, which is horrendous, by the way, 16 a day. In the last 15 years, we have now 1,200 government programs, and that suicide rate amongst veterans has gone up as high as, we're told, 22, now sits between 20 and 22 in the most recent study that was done. The active duty service member suicide rate has gone from 1 a day, which again is just to get your mind around that, 1 a day active duty service member, to now nearly 4 a day. And the government in a lot of ways has provided good programming, but there are so many other opportunities and options for people who are struggling. And organizations like ours can do that. And the 3,200 folks that we've had come through our program, over 99% of those have come out on the other side successful. Many of those who come into our program would be, we would say, maybe high risk for suicide, having attempted suicide or ideated, talked about suicide. And on the other side of that have said that's certainly not the answer and begun to move forward. So, these non-clinical, outside of the system, kind of outside of the normal box of thinking programs have a tremendous track record. We just have to get our veterans to those programs.
And you speak about the idea that the VA has very good programs, but it also has some programs that could be used, some adjusting, we'll put it that way. This administration has tried to kind of reform the VA on different fronts. Can you speak a little bit, just really quick before I let you go, about what else you'd like to see the VA change in its approach to this issue?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of programs that the VA is uniquely qualified to administer, and reasons that the VA was initially started. During World War I, there was a very specific reason the VA came into being and the types of treatments that it was given to oversee. Over the years, that's changed. I think a lot of the problems the VA is experiencing is because they're dealing with things they were never equipped or organized to deal with. Some of the things the VA is doing should probably be privatized. Others, very specific programs, continue to be managed by the VA. But beyond that, the VA needs to be okay with, and it needs to be okay for the VA to recommend to those service members that need help alternative programs. Again, funded outside of the government, administered outside of the government, very successful with a track record. The VA needs to be able to look at someone who they're counseling on their course of treatment and say, look, you can stay here, but there are also these other options, and we'll let you decide what you need to do.
Yeah, Jeremy Stalnecker, you can catch him on Wednesday at the hearing that we just discussed right there. I also advise everyone to go check out his program, the Mighty Oaks Warriors program. It's a very great organization. You can contribute in different ways. But Jeremy, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and discussing this very important issue.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.